Lake Orion resident Bob Watrous is a Navy veteran. He's also the park manager for the Veterans Memorial in Lake Orion. We spent our last half hour of my life talking to Bob about his early experiences in high school and grade school, and how he finally entered the Navy before getting out of high school. And Bob was just beginning to tell us about his experience in Pensacola, Florida. One of your favorite places, right?
Well, not really.
Oh.
Yeah, but
that was your first assignment after basic training.
After basic training, and I'll tell you, at that time we didn't travel by air, we traveled by Greyhound bus or train. Mm-hmm. They sent me down there and I was on a train. They got into a train strike, believe it or not. And I was going to be AWOL. But anyway, some passenger on the train took me under their wing. It was a man and a woman, as I remember. And somehow they called down at Pensacola, Florida, and told them that I was in the midst of this train strike and that I was going to be late, so it was okay. But I was scared to death, you know, that I was going to be AWOL. Had they not stepped in, I don't know what I'd have done.
And just as a reminder to our viewers who may not have seen our first episode, we're talking about a period of time in between the Korean War and Vietnam.
Yeah.
We're talking about the middle 1950s here.
Yeah, and it was called Cold War.
Yes.
Yeah. But getting back to my story about this yeoman that I went and asked for a transfer, he says, no, you got to stay here 18 months. And he says, you can put in for it, but you won't get it. I said, well, I want to put in for it. So.
And you did this because you were assigned to Pensacola, Florida, doing things you really didn't want to do.
I didn't even know the Navy did them things, you know. And so every morning, or not every morning, about once a week on my way to the hangar, airplane hangar where I worked, I would stop in and say, my orders come in yet? And he'd say, Sailor, get the hell out of here, you know. Okay, so next week I'd go back and ask him again, my orders come in? He said, get out of here. So one day going to the hangar where they were raising the flag, well, we all had to stop and salute the flag while they're taking it up. And I look across and he's standing on the steps of the personnel office. So I get close and he says, come here. And he says, you're not going to believe what happened. He says, you got orders to go aboard the battleship Iowa. Well, I didn't even know what that was. And so I come home on leave. They gave me 2 weeks leave, and he was mad at me then because I got orders to go to the Iowa and he's stuck in Florida, you know. And but I went back and went to Norfolk, Virginia. Well, at that time, that was a bustling place. There was ships and sailors everywhere in Norfolk. And I got there, it was after dark, I remember, and it was about Christmas time. And I don't know how, I got to the main gate, and they put me in an old Plymouth car and took me out to the ship. And I looked up at this thing, and I thought, no, you know, what happened? And it was so big. It was 887 feet long is what the Iowa was. That's how long it was. And so this guy let me out of the car, and I had my sea bag and, you know, I don't know, a pea coat I was carrying or something. And I wasn't very big, and this thing weighed 100 pounds, I guess. So I walk up this gangway up to the ship. Well, I didn't even know it. That was the officer's gangway. They run me out of there.
Big trouble.
Big trouble. Get out of here. You know? So I go to the after gangway, and I get up, and I didn't know you were supposed to salute the flag and request permission to come aboard like you do in the Navy. So the officer stands there. Well, I think, well, what? You know, what do you want me to do? I'm here. But anyway, they finally let me aboard, and they took me down, way down in the ship, and they said, somebody will come and see you in the morning. Nobody came. You know, there's a couple of us down there. We're wondering what we're supposed to do, you know. I think after a day or two, somebody finally came, and we got assigned to a company or a division, and it turned out well. But I was a gunner's mate is what I was, and I served my time on that. I was in the Mediterranean twice. I went down across the Arctic Circle into Rio de Janeiro, Brazil once. We were up in the North Atlantic, up in Scotland, Firth of Clyde, Scotland, in the fall of 57, and they sent word for us to come back. They were going to put the ship out of commission. That was the first we'd heard about it. So they brought us back, and rather than go to Norfolk, where we thought we was coming back, we pulled into Philadelphia. And We pulled it in one night, woke up in the morning, and the ship was sitting on wood blocks.
Amazing.
Right out of the water, no water underneath it.
Amazing. Let's back up a little bit. Where was your first cruise to on the Iowa?
Okay, I think our first, after I went aboard, we went to Annapolis, Maryland to the, we picked up a load of midshipmen. As I remember, there was probably 100 of them, maybe a little more. And we went up to New York for Fleet Week, they called it, and these midshipmen got to be escorts of all the visitors who came aboard ship. They'd never been aboard ship before, but here they were escorting people around our ship. You know?
So it sounds like you may have had a little fun along the way at that
Oh,
point.
yeah. And then I think from there we took them on their midshipman cruise, they called it, because they did it once a year for them officers. And we went to Mediterranean. And I don't know, we probably made 6 or 8 stops over there. All the stops that the Navy pulled into, we
A
did.
lot of interesting countries around the Mediterranean. What do you tell me some of the things you remember about that?
Well, I remember everything was poor. It seemed like a lot of cobblestone streets, a lot of old buildings. I mean, really old buildings. I think our last stop in the Mediterranean, we went up to Istanbul, Turkey, which is, and then you entered into the Black Sea from there, that Bosphorus Straits. We were the first American ship to go into the Black Sea after World War II. And I know when we pulled into Istanbul, people followed our ship, and because they'd never seen us there before. And if you wake up and this ship was in your harbor, you knew it. I mean, it was a big ship. You know, at that time it was the biggest one there is. But that's what we did. We just went and made appearances. That's all we did.
Yeah. When you
you
watch the news today and you see the stories about these people escaping from Syria and coming through these countries where you've been, does that bring back any memories, or what kind of stuff goes through your mind?
Well, apparently they've given up all hope. Their countries are so poor. I mean, this is the way they were in the 50s, as I remember. We were in Italy, we were in Spain, we was in some islands, we was in that island of Crete, Piraeus, Greece, I think that's an island too, but we pulled into there. But everything seemed so poor. I've got pictures of their vehicles and stuff, and people walking their animals down the streets, you know. And I think it's worse now than it was back then, at that time, in some of these countries.
Okay.
But I think it's sad.
We're going to take a break, but we'll be back with Bob Watrous in just a minute.
Yep.
Here with Bob Watrous, talking about Navy experiences in the Mediterranean and comparing what you saw with what we're hearing on the news today and how poor the countries are around there and that sort of thing. It must have almost seemed luxurious to get back on the ship compared with what you saw.
Yeah. But I think all the guys felt the same way. Now, we didn't always get to the better part of town. There was like 2,500 guys on our ship. They would tell the enlisted men, you can go this part of town. The officers went to this part of town. So we didn't usually get to the better part of town.
They didn't want you to get spoiled, I guess.
I guess not. But
was the beer as good in that part of town as it was in that part of town?
yeah. Yeah. But I just, you know, we have got it good here in this country, and I just can't help. People think our young people have all gone to pot. They haven't. You talk to these young people that are in uniform, and you're proud of them. You know, you really are. And We have our functions at the memorial. There was a young lady there last time in uniform. She was a good-looking girl, and she was doing a good thing. You know, I don't know what her job in the service was, but I know she was doing good. We've got a lot of good young people.
Friends have told me everybody in this country needs to get out of this country at least once in their life
Yep, I think so.
so they can get a taste of what the rest of the world is like and have a better feel for how lucky we are here.
We are lucky, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And I think they pick on our country. I'm not sure that I agree with all the illegal immigrants coming. I guess that would be my soapbox, if I had one, would be to stop that.
We've got to find a better way to deal with it, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. I think out west, I've been in Arizona and Nevada. Boy, there's a lot of people out there that have just, they're living underneath trees. You know, we saw them last winter, whole families living underneath palm trees. You know, that ain't right.
Yeah. Okay, well, you were in the Mediterranean. Where did you go after that in the Navy?
Well, after that, I think we came back to Norfolk for a while. Like I say, we were the flagship. We had the admiral for the 5th Fleet, I believe it was. And he didn't like Norfolk, apparently. So we went to South America. And we was down there for a month or two. And then we came back again to Norfolk.
Whereabouts did you go into a port in South America?
Yeah, but we never pulled into a port. We always had to anchor out because our ship was so big, and we'd anchor out right in the middle of their harbor. We'd drop anchor, and then we'd ride Liberty launches back and forth.
What countries did you visit down there?
Well, you know, like I say, Rio de Janeiro was the big
Brazil?
one. Port-au-Prince, Trinidad, I think, and all the way up South America. We hit all them little countries, and we'd stay a day or two. Maybe in Rio, we might have stayed a week, but I don't remember really.
What was your impression there? Was it similar?
You know, not quite as bad, and I guess I still remember that big cross. If you've ever seen that cross
Rio
up on
de
that
Janeiro?
in Rio de Janeiro, I still remember that cross up there. But I think their highways and roads were a lot better than they were in Europe, as I remember at that time. But Europe is all old, and I think it still is. I know England was really old in the 50s. I don't know if it's any better now, but everything there was old.
Well, they had a head start on us.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. In Scotland, the people up there were really nice to us. You know, that's our last, like a Firth of Clyde, Scotland. I don't know what that, I think that was on the south end of Scotland. But really nice people.
Now, is that where you went after South America, or?
Yeah, I think we'd come back to Norfolk. Was in Norfolk maybe a month, and we took off and went to the North Atlantic, and we operated with NATO up there, all the ships in the NATO fleet. I remember one morning we woke up and there was 200 ships out there. Never even knew they was there. You know.
Did you have the opportunity to associate with military folks from other countries while you were?
No, not very much.
No.
Not that we could talk to our ship. Like they would send a tanker to us. We'd take all the fuel off of a tanker. It would leave us and it would be way up out of the water. And then we would fuel other ships. Now we would even fuel Canadian ships, ships of the other navies. And sometimes we would take on supplies from them. And I remember one time we were fueling on one side, we were taking supplies on the other side. Well, there was a Canadian ship over here. Well, at 2 o'clock, they held up a beer. They got a beer in the afternoon. Well, that was terrible. And we were taking potatoes on, and this got to be kind of a world-famous thing. We started throwing potatoes at this Canadian ship out in the middle of the ocean, you know. And our captain really got mad, you know. But a lot of potatoes went back and forth, you know.
Now, what were your duties in your particular job?
Okay.
What did you have to do?
Well, at first, when I went on that, like I say, it was a big ship. And my general quarters station was in the powder magazine, which was way down at the bottom of the ship. And there's a lot of little rooms, you know, 8 by 10, 10 by 10, and full of powder, bags of powder. that would fire them 16-inch guns, and we had to put them on a lift, and it took it up to the turret, which was 6 or 8 stories up. You know, we were that far down in that ship. Later on, after I was in for a while, I got to be in a 5-inch gun mount on the O2 level, which is 2 levels up, and really liked that. I mean, we were outside, we could see everything that was going on. If we was in port, right above the officers' gangway, we could see all their visitors coming aboard, and there was a lot of them. And we saw everything. But we were on the detail. My gun, or my job at that time, really was to take care of that 5-inch mount. And my job during refueling was to fire a little brass rod over to the other ship that was going to either take fuel, or we were going to take supplies or give them supplies. And it was a messenger, they called it, and it was a little string that went over first, and that's how these lines got bigger and bigger as they kept pulling them over. But my whole job was to fire that little brass rod over to that other ship. But we had to stay out there all the time in case the line parted or something. We had to do it again. So we were outside all the time. Really liked it.
So after the NATO exercises, where did they move you to then?
Well, no, I think after the NATO exercise, we did that a couple different cruises, they call it. And then, like I say, the last one in the latter part of '57, when we was up in the North Atlantic, they said, "Come on home. You're done." You know.
What went through your mind when they said that to you?
Well, at first I was happy. Then I saw how serious it was, and it was real. I couldn't believe that this battleship, they're going to put it out of commission. Although it had been put out of commission after World War II. It was out of commission until they needed it for Korea. And then we put it out of commission in '57 and early part of '58.
When was that ship built?
1943, I think. It served in World War II. Yeah, all 4 of them, Iowa-class battleships in New Jersey, Wisconsin, Missouri, and Iowa. They were the last battleships ever built.
Okay.
There'll never be another one.
Yeah. Something, huh?
Yeah.
We're going to take a break and be right back with Bob Watrous.
K9 Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Each year they take in hundreds of dogs and bring them into suitable homes. A certified nonprofit organization, K9 Dog Rescue strives to give pound dogs a new leash on life. To donate, adopt, or even volunteer, call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website, dogsaver.org, and click on the K9 Stray Rescue League link.
Back with Bob Watrous. We're just talking about some of your last experiences with the Navy. Just before you got out, they sent you word they were going to decommission the Iowa? Was that it?
Yeah. Put it in mothballs.
Okay, so what am I going to do now?
Well, so we pulled in there that night, the afternoon, as I remember. We pulled we thought we were tied up, and woke up in the morning. They'd pumped all the water out of the dry dock, and we were sitting on wood blocks. And that's no kidding. And to look down to the bottom of that ship outside and see how far down that really went, kind of scary. But anyway, I stayed on it because I was a short timer. They started taking the crew off a little bit at a time. And they left me because I had, I think, 2 months to go after we got it all cosmoline. They wrapped everything up and put cosmoline, which was a type of grease, I think. And I just stayed there and kept doing cleanup work and fire watches. They had a watch on it to make sure that everything was okay. And we slept on another ship, a USS Chandelier. I don't even remember what that looked like, but we stayed over there and worked on the Iowa during the daytime. And I got discharged. I just walked down the gangway, went out the main gate, and went home. It was no big deal. Nobody cared.
So when you got home, you say, "Here I am, Mom and Dad"?
Yeah,
Or-
my dad says, and they let me go a couple weeks early. My dad knew, when I got home that he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, they let me go," But I don't know if you knew 58 or not, but that was there was no jobs in 58. My dad, like I said, was a general foreman over the truck plant, but he couldn't even get me a job in the truck plant at that time. So I was ready to go back in the Navy. I had 90 days to go back, and I was all ready to go back. And this cousin of mine from up north, him and I had went down to the state fair on Woodward. Coming back, these two girls in a car. Now this is a true story. My wife would say it isn't, but it is. These two girls picked us up and it scared us to death because we'd never had it happen before. No, I'm exaggerating. But anyway, I did meet my wife on Woodward from the state fair, and we were married the next winter. That winter, I met her in September. We were married in January.
So this was just after you got out of the Navy.
After I got out, but I was ready to go back in the Navy, but I was in a friend's restaurant having a cup of coffee there, and I was telling him I was going back in the Navy because I couldn't get a job, and the guy was sitting there. He says, "Well, I lay floors. Do you want to lay floors?" I said, "Well, yeah, So I didn't even know people did linoleum and tile work. I thought we was going to lay hardwood floors. He pulls into Karen's Carpets in Drayton Plains. And I thought, what's this? But that's how I got in the floor covering business, and I was 40 years in the carpet business after. And like I was telling you earlier, the guy lived in Davisburg, and he couldn't manage money. So one day he come to me and he says, "You're going to be the boss from now on." I said, "Bill, what's the matter?" He says, "I can't take care of money." He said, "If I got it, I spend it." And he says, "If you'll pay me so much money, I'll work for you." Well, me and him worked together 35 years after that. Never had an argument. Never did.
Now, what was the name of the business? Was it Karen's Carpets?
It was Karen's Carpets at that time, and they sold linoleum and tile, but that was about a year or two. We were doing a school out on Pine Knob Road out here, and they came out and told us that we were all done. They weren't going to sell tile and linoleum. They was just going to sell carpet. And that's when they moved down there at Loon Lake,
Right.
that building that you know about. Otherwise, before that, they were right in Drayton Plains, in a little bitty place.
Which is funny because the place on Loon Lake was right across from the house where my wife and I raised our kids.
Really?
In Waterford. We could look out our back door and see Karen's Carpet.
Okay, so you
Small world.
Yeah. But they got to be a pretty big outfit in the
indeed.
carpet business, and it was. But anyway, they told us to go to work at Pontiac Floor Covering over Orchard Lake Road in Pontiac. Well, still it was 58 and 59, and there was not a lot of work. And so him and I, this Bill, were subcontracting. We weren't making very much money. So I told him one day, I said, "Bill, you go ahead and be contracting." And I had been offered a job to go to work in the store. 5.5 days a week for $80 a week. That's what I was getting paid. Which was in 58, 59, that wasn't all that bad. We could live on it. But after World War II, they built a lot of subdivisions on GI loans.
Sure.
And there's still a lot of them around. Snow Apple up there in Clarkson, that off Walden Road, that was one of them. There was 2 or 3 off Clarkson Road. There was some down behind St. Joe's Hospital in there. But a lot of them houses got repossessed, and our company that we was working for couldn't get all the work done. So I started working at night. I'd work for him in the store in the daytime, and me and this other guy would go out at night after work and repair floors, do whatever we needed to do. And got doing pretty good at that, and I quit and went back to installing. Well, that was when this fella said if, I could be the boss and he'd just work for me. So we worked for Karen's and Shell Floor Covering, which is right there by Karen's. At that time, and I worked for him for about 8 years over there, and he was a pretty good size outfit. And I got tired of all that, and I said, "I'm going to Lake Orion," because we'd moved up here, and open up a little store in the country. I never dreamed what was going to happen. We opened up here on Clarkson Road, where that tool rental place is, right on Clarkson Road, right here off 24. me and my family built that building, and it wasn't 2 weeks, and here come a builder, and then another builder. And before I knew it, I had 10 or 15 builders that we was working for. I think, what in the world happened? But in salesman, when I first opened up, he said, what the heck are you doing? You know, but they didn't know that all these gravel roads, there was new houses being built in the, well, that would have been about 1970 or 70.
What was the name of your business?
Lake Orion Floor Covering.
Okay.
Yeah, in
So you and your partner started that.
well, I started it. He didn't have nothing to do with it. He was still just working for us. It was me and my wife, took everything that we had. And,
So your wife was involved in the business as well?
Yep, she was, and she was our boss. And my sons, I got 2 sons, and they were in it. And we had a carpet crew, and this Bill, a linoleum crew. And it got to be where...
What year did you start that?
Started that about 1970 or 71.
Okay.
And it was a little bitty store. And like I say, we didn't have much money, and I had a pretty good reputation, and I needed a bunch of supplies to open up the store. And I was talking to one distributor, and I said, I need stuff, but I don't have any money. He said, well, what do you need? And I told him. He said, be there in the morning. And they delivered all that stuff on my word.
Could somebody do that today?
No, no, you couldn't do it today. No. And we did, like I said, the builders from Cairns and Shells came up there, and pretty soon we had a business that was just thriving, and I did it for 26 years. And then my sons, I offered it to them. I got sick, and I offered it to them. They didn't want it, so we sold it. And they went into the carpentry work, and they built houses. Matter of fact, these houses here, we built these. I had 7 acres here at that time. We split it up, built houses. And I helped them. But they're good boys, and they're still working, you know.
I have a cousin who was in the plumbing business, and he was riding in my car, and we were just driving around town one time. And I said, I'll bet if we go down a certain street and you go by houses you've worked on, you've got a memory of each one.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be the case in your business too?
Yeah. Yeah, and even so today, I'll tell my wife, we put a floor in that house, you know. And sometimes I can even tell you what we put in it, you know.
And when you look at a model of the USS Iowa, and you look at a specific place, does that bring back a memory
Absolutely,
to you?
yep. Like on the fantail, which is the back of a ship, there's 2 blisters out over the main deck, and them are 40-millimeter gun mounts. Well, at that time, the ship wasn't air conditioned, and there was like a wall built around those mounts, and you were safe inside there. We'd go up there and sleep inside that gun mount because it was so hot down below. I think we're... Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we're so pleased that you were able to be on our program,
Well,
Bob. Thank you very much. And thank you not only for your service in the Navy, but thank you for your service here and all you've done for the Vets Memorial over there.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks again.
Yep. Thank you.
We'll see you next time.